I'm 78 years old, and the tongue, that small, soft muscle in your mouth, has more power to destroy a life than any weapon ever forged by human hands. Most people treat words like they're free, like they cost nothing, like you can throw them out into the world and walk away clean, but that is one of the most dangerous illusions a human being can carry through their life. And the proverb about the tongue, the ancient one, the one that has been repeated across thousands of years in dozens of cultures, it didn't survive all that time because it was poetic. It survived because it is ruthlessly, painfully true. The proverb says, life and death are in the power of the tongue. Not some life and some death, not sometimes, life and death. The full weight of both extremes sitting right there behind your teeth, waiting to be released with nothing more than breath and intention. And when you're young, you read that and you think you understand it. You think it means don't say cruel things, don't call people names, don't be mean. And yes, it includes that. But that reading is so shallow it barely scratches the surface of what those ancient teachers were actually pointing at. Here's what they really meant. The tongue doesn't just affect other people, it shapes you. Every word you speak aloud is a declaration to your own nervous system about what is real, what is true, and what is possible. When you say, I can't do this, you're not reporting a fact. You're issuing a command. Your brain hears the word can't and begins searching for evidence to confirm it. It starts closing doors, narrowing vision. And it does this not because your brain is your enemy, but because your brain is extraordinarily obedient. It takes your words as instructions. It builds your reality around the language you use most consistently. This is the layer most people miss entirely. They think the danger of the tongue is social, what other people will think, how relationships will be damaged, what reputation will be lost. And those things matter. They matter enormously. But the deeper danger is internal. The words you speak most often become the architecture of your mind. Think about the person who has said, I'm terrible with money for 30 years. Every time a financial decision comes up, those words are already running in the background, not as a neutral description, as a prophecy. The tongue spoken that sentence so many times that the mind stopped questioning it and started fulfilling it. And the person genuinely believes the problem is money. The real problem is the sentence they never stopped saying. But it goes even deeper than that. The ancient proverb about the tongue was not just about self-talk or reputation. It was about the relationship between language and reality at the most fundamental level. Across Hebrew wisdom, Greek philosophy, Vedic teaching, and the oral traditions of indigenous cultures worldwide, there is a convergence on one stunning idea, that language does not merely describe reality, language participates in creating it. When you name something, you give it form. When you give something form, you give it power. And when you give something power through your words, you have made it real in a way that pure thought never could. This is why the ancients were so careful about what they said. Not out of superstition, out of precision. They understood that the mouth was not a reporting device. It was a generative instrument. Every time you open your mouth and speak something into being, you are doing something far more consequential than communication. You are building your world. And here's what most people miss about this principle in daily life. It's not the dramatic words that do the most damage or the most good. It's the ordinary ones, the throwaway ones, the ones you say without even noticing you've said them. This is impossible, said while staring at a challenge. Nothing ever works out for me, said after a disappointment. People can't be trusted, said after one betrayal. These sentences feel like observations. They feel like honest assessments of what just happened. But they are not observations. They're generalizations, masquerading as facts. And every time you speak a generalization as though it were a fact, you're coding it deeper into your operating system. You are making it stickier, more automatic, more true, not in the real world, but in the world you actually live in, which is the world inside your perception. The tongue creates the lens. And then you spend the rest of your life looking through that lens without ever questioning who made it and when and whether it still serves you. And there's something else happening beneath that, something even more uncomfortable to sit with. And when you consistently use language that diminishes, catastrophizes, or closes doors, you are not just shaping your own perception. You are broadcasting a signal to everyone around you. The people who love you start calibrating their own language to match yours. They stop sharing possibilities with you because they have learned through experience that your tongue will find the crack in anything. The people who are still growing begin to avoid you, Not because they don't care, but because your language is expensive. It costs them energy to be around, and you may never know why the room got quieter, why certain conversations stopped happening, why the invitations slowed. The tongue doesn't just build or destroy in the moment of speaking. It builds or destroys your ecology, the whole living system of relationships and opportunities that surrounds you. Now here's the layer that took me the longest to understand, and I wish with everything in me that I had understood it at 20. The tongue doesn't only work forward, it also works in reverse. Meaning, the words you refuse to speak are just as powerful as the ones you do speak. The apology you never gave, the appreciation you felt but never said out loud, the love that was real but stayed locked inside because speaking it felt vulnerable or unnecessary or assumed, the truth you swallowed because the timing wasn't right, and then the timing was never right, and then the moment passed entirely. Silence has a weight. In the particular silence of words that should have been spoken but weren't, that silence accumulates. It sits in the body, it sits in the relationship. It sits in your own conscience like a debt that keeps drawing interest. The proverb says, life and death are in the power of the tongue. Death can happen through what is spoken, but death can also happen through what is permanently withheld. I have watched marriages die in slow silence, not because of the terrible things that were said, but because of the necessary things that were never said. The kind word held back, the honest concern swallowed, the forgiveness extended privately but never verbalized, leaving the other person to carry a weight they didn't know had been lifted. Words spoken aloud do something that words thought in private cannot do. They change the relational field between two people. They make the invisible visible. They transform internal states into shared reality. And when that mechanism is consistently bypassed, when people decide that what they feel is communicated through presence or behavior or assumption, the gap between what is real and what is understood grows until it becomes uncrossable. And this brings us to the practical application of everything the proverb is actually teaching. If the tongue has this much power, generative power, shaping power, relational power, then the discipline of the tongue is not about restraint alone. That's only half of it. The full discipline is knowing when to speak and what to say, with as much clarity and care as you can bring. It is learning to use this instrument consciously rather than reflexively. The reflexive tongue is dangerous. It speaks from whatever emotional state is currently running. It says what feels immediately satisfying rather than what is actually true or useful. It reaches for exaggeration in moments of frustration. You always do this. This never works. Everything's falling apart. Because exaggeration feels more expressive. But every exaggeration you speak trains your brain toward a distorted map of reality. And you navigate from the map, not from the territory. The conscious tongue pauses, not forever, not in a way that withholds what should be said, but it pauses long enough to ask, is this true? Is this accurate? Is this the word I actually mean? Or is this the word that's easiest right now? Is this building something or burning something down? That pause is not weakness. That pause is mastery. It is the difference between being dragged by your words and leading with them, and that pause becomes easier to find the more you practice it. Because the tongue, like every instrument, can be trained. A musician does not start with mastery over their instrument. They start with clumsiness, with notes that miss, with passages that fall apart under pressure. But through deliberate practice, through slowing down enough to play each note with intention, they develop a relationship with the instrument that eventually allows beauty to emerge naturally, even spontaneously. The tongue works the same way. Right now, for most people, it operates almost entirely on autopilot. It says what the mood says. It echoes whatever the emotional weather is in the moment. Disciplining it feels unnatural at first, even dishonest, as if pausing before you speak means you're being fake. But authenticity and precision are not enemies. The most authentic version of you is not the most impulsive version. It is the version that has learned to speak what is actually true, not just what is immediately reactive. And here is the deepest layer of all, the one the proverb is ultimately pointing toward when it places life and death at the two ends of the tongue's power. Your words, over time, become your identity, not your real identity, not the deep unchangeable truth of who you are, but your functional identity, the self you operate as day to day, the self you believe yourself to be. That self is constructed, brick by brick, from the language you use consistently over years and decades, from the stories you tell about yourself, from the labels you accept and repeat, from the limits you name as real. You're not trapped by what happened to you. You are far more than most people are comfortable admitting, shaped by the story you have been telling about what happened to you. And the story lives in language, and language comes out of the tongue. Which means, and this is the hope inside the proverb, the part that makes it worth learning even now, even if you're not 20, the story can change. Not by pretending the past was different, not by toxic positivity or empty affirmation, but by slowly, deliberately choosing more accurate language, more precise language, language that opens possibility instead of foreclosing it. Instead of, I can't, the question, how could I? Instead of, this always happens to me, the observation, this happened and I can decide what to do next. Instead of silence where appreciation belongs, the actual words. Instead of silence where truth belongs, the actual words. The tongue is not just how you speak to the world, it is how you speak yourself into existence day after day, year after year. And the proverb has survived all this time because the people who understood it, truly understood it, not just intellectually, but in the living of their lives, those people used language differently. They became different. Their relationships were different. Their inner world was different. Life and death and the power of the tongue is not a metaphor. It is one of the most precise descriptions of human reality ever compressed into a single sentence. Use it with that understanding. Every time you open your mouth, you're making something. Make it count.